All right. So this is really where a lot of the sauce is going to be. And honestly, I think this is going to be really eye opening for a lot of you who are watching this right now because this isn't really spoken about too much. And even myself, I did a scour on YouTube to see what other content was around on this. And it's all surface level. There's really not anything good out there that's teaching this. So it's going to be a good one. It's probably going to be pretty long as well. So strap in. And honestly, I think this will open up your eyes in regards to how you see product testing now. And I've mentioned in a few live calls in Discord that honestly, I think that I can pretty much make any product work. And the big reason behind that, or one of the main reasons behind that, is my outlook and my approach to actually how I'm testing products. So a lot of the time, the product actually isn't the main lever. I mean, of course, you need a good product. You have to have product market fit. If you're trying to sell a fidget spinner now, it's never going to work. But as long as you see and validate a product is working at scale, which if we just follow Cyberglow, these guys are still absolutely crushing it. I think 150,000 website sessions last month. There's no reason why I can't come in and compete in this product. Now, if I just come in and compete with the same messaging, the same type of ads, the same type of landing pages, then it can still work. It still can absolutely work. But a lot of people will actually go ahead and that will be their main approach. And then if it doesn't work, they kill the product. They say the product doesn't work and then they move on. But they don't actually look at, okay, this hasn't worked. My initial test hasn't worked. How can I approach this differently? How can I build leverage within this product test and come in and actually compete? So that's what we're going to dive into. And we're going to dive into actually breaking down different angles and then going into avatars, sub-avatars, and really just getting deep and opening up your mind to how to look at any product that you're about to test. And even if you're already scaling a product, this is so fucking valuable because this is how you unlock new levels of scale. So let's dive straight into it. So time to cover what 95% of people skip. As I mentioned, this isn't really spoken about a lot. And we're actually going deep into our research documents. So we've got our raw research, we've got our deep research. Most people will just leave it at that and they'll just dive straight into it. But I've mentioned here, raw research alone doesn't create scale. Angle expansion does. This is the step that nobody teaches, but it's one of the most important video lessons that you'll watch. And really what we're going to be covering today is essentially how we transform and break down our research into desires, pain, angles, and sub-avatars. So angles being essentially like the doorways into the market, and sub-avatars are essentially the different types of groups of people that we're going to be communicating with and speaking to. And when you understand the system, you'll never misjudge a product. Again, you'll stop saying this product doesn't work because 99% of the time it's not the product that fails. It literally is just your execution. And to be honest, most of the time, it's not even laziness. I would say it's more just so a lack of knowledge. But this is hopefully, as I mentioned, going to completely open up your mind to that. And let's dive straight into it. So I think before we get into more of the sauce around this, I want to address probably where a lot of you guys are going wrong. And it's the noob mindset, or what I like to call the noob mindset, and why most fail product test. Because a lot of people will even send me messages and they'll say, oh, Cam, I've found this competitor, they're scaling, the product is validated, why is it not working for me? And pretty much what I'm about to run through, 99% of the time, is the reason why. So the first thing is no research understanding and you're not going deep enough. The average product test of an e-com noob, it's almost like this hamster wheel where they run with the main message a competitor is scaling with. They do no research, or they'll just do surface level research. Most of the time that isn't even going through Reddit like we've already done. Most of the time that is just a case of looking at what the competitor is doing, or maybe doing some deep research with ChatGPT. They skip over everything I'm about to teach you. They have no understanding of the market. They launch a shallow product test. They get no sales, or they get a negative ROAS. Day one of testing, maybe they get no sales, or day one of testing, they're at a 0.7 ROAS. Okay, they kill the product, they say it doesn't work, and then they're literally back at the start of the hamster wheel, and they're moving on to the next product. And essentially, these are usually the groups of people who never make money on ecom, or they say that ecom is saturated and doesn't work anymore. And then they go and start trading Forex or go to Amazon FBA and think that it's easier over that side. When in reality, they're just missing out on a lot of the key fundamentals. Now, as I mentioned, the key question usually always is like, if a competitor is scaling with his product, and why doesn't it work for me? Why has my test flopped? The reality of that is just because what they're doing is working for them, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. And here's why. The message that you see them pushing is literally just the tip of the iceberg. So even when you go through someone's ad library and you're like, okay, they're pushing this message, they're pushing this angle, they're speaking to this avatar, there's really limited visibility into what you can see. When actually below that iceberg, like below the ocean, there's so much more going on. They have so much more data. They've done so much more research. They have existing customers. They're speaking to the customers. They know the pain points. They know their desires. And that's their competitive edge within that market. So a real example would be take a hair removal product. So in this case, we'll go with this serum here, that's Cyberglow are running. And I guess like the main thing that they're scaling with, the main category or core problem is women who struggle with unwanted hair. And most will just stop there. That will be what they will consider as their angle. But underneath that main core problem, there is literally so much more happening. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of desires. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of pain points. There's multiple angles that you can go with. There's multiple different types of avatars and sub-avatars that you can speak to. And that's really what people are usually blind to. Now, the second tier is the hidden layers inside your core problem, which we've alluded to there. Our research around women who struggle with unwanted hair makes it clear that the problem isn't just one idea. It's an entire emotional landscape sitting underneath that single problem. So as I mentioned, we literally have desire clusters, emotional drivers, sub-avatars, belief patterns that need to be flipped, which is a really key one, and then different angles that we can tap into. All of this is invisible until you do the proper research. This is why just ripping a competitor's product often fails. You're copying the category, not the deep layers that make it convert. When you actually study the raw Reddit, Amazon, TikTok, YouTube transcripts, you quickly realize that you don't just have one avatar or angle, you have multiple different things that you can test. And your job is essentially to extract them and go deep. So it's not just a case of, okay, let's run with women who want unwanted hair, really surface level messaging. You launch that initial test, you get no data coming through. Okay, this doesn't work. Your job then, based off your research and based off what I'm about to teach you, it's okay, that messaging hasn't quite hit. Now it's time to pivot and go into a different type of messaging, or it could even be a different type of ad format. There's so many different things at play here. And if you're just coming at it from one side, from one angle, you're essentially just riding on that working on your first test, which these days is relatively unrealistic. Anyone who I pretty much know now who's doing good numbers in ecom, if I ask them, okay, what did the first 2 weeks of your product test look like? Usually it is a case of, oh yeah, it was really inconsistent. We were unprofitable, losing money for the first 3 weeks. And what do you think turned it around for them? It wasn't just a case of launch more ads, or just hope that the pixel optimizes and then suddenly you're profitable. No, absolutely not. It is a case of launch the ads, look at the data, do more research, understand the market. If you're doing things properly, you have launched with a diverse batch of content. You're testing different angles there, and you're just buying data. You want to understand what is actually working. And once you understand what is working, then that's when you double the fuck down and go really, really deep. So the first thing that we want to be looking at which lives within our core category of women who struggle with unwanted hair, is you've got to understand that underneath this core problem, everyone has a different desire, and there's multiple different desires, but there's obviously shared desires as well. And our job is to identify, okay, what are these desires and which ones are the most common within our research and which are the most shared desires, because these are the desires that will have the largest TAMs and have the most scale behind them as well. So before you start mapping the clusters, there's one core principle that you need to understand. And this comes from Breakthrough Advertising. If you've not read it, you absolutely should. And I've pulled this quote as well. You don't create desire, you channel it. And you can see here, this is a quotation pulled directly from the book. Copy cannot create desire for a product. It can only take the hopes, dreams, fears, and desires that already exist in the hearts of millions of people and focus those already existing desires onto a particular product. This is the copywriter's task, not to create mass desire, but to channel and direct it. So this is exactly what we're doing, and this is what I'm taking you guys through. Okay, we're not just now looking at the tip of the iceberg. We're going much, much deeper. We're understanding what these desires are, which are the desires that classify as a mass desire. And then our job is literally just to channel traffic and channel our messaging and our ads and tap into these core desires. Every strong angle is built on an emotional foundation of what the avatar wants, what the avatar fears, what the avatar is tired of, what the avatar is ashamed of, what the avatar dreams of, and what the avatar wishes was easier. Now, if you've already watched the video of me doing the raw research using Reddit answers and going into all of the different subreddits, in that video, I was actually saying, I was extracting bits of content and I was saying, okay, actually, I can see this working really well as an angle, or I can see that this is a clear avatar that we can speak to when we start building out our ads. And this is because all of this information now is ingrained in my head. So once you understand all of this, when you do get to doing your research, and the more research that you do, you'll start to see 10 steps ahead. And that's where in e-com and product testing becomes so much easier. Your raw research and deep research contains all of the desires that your avatar already feels. You need to identify the strongest desires and position your product in front of it. Desire is what converts and scales. So if you have your deep research document and if you have your raw category context file, everything that we need is in there. Like, it's our job to now extract all of that out and break it down. Most desire clusters tie back to a deeper human driver. So this is super important. And this is, I would say, one of the most important things that you need to understand, that although we have multiple different desires, pretty much all of the desires that we're going to find within our research ties back to one of these clusters. So we have health, which is like avoiding harm, protecting your body; status and identity, feel confident in who I am and how I'm perceived; comfort, make life smoother, simpler, less effort. They want convenience in their life, maybe they want to save time; belonging, be accepted, not judged, and feel understood. So if we, again, revert back to the research that we've done, people are feeling not feminine, they feel like a guy, they don't want that. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel like they are a woman. They belong with sort of that category, and that they want that as their identity. Control, which is have predictability, certainty, and power over outcomes. So again, in our research, we have women who are waking up every single morning and having to pluck. They don't know how bad their hair growth is going to be when they wake up and look in the mirror. Like, they want control. They want predictability in their life. Intimacy/connection, feel desired, close, and emotionally connected. Again, we know this is a huge, huge, huge pain point if you have watched the raw research that I did. And then we have freedom, which is have independence, flexibility, and the ability to choose freely. And now understanding which deep driver fuels each desire cluster tells us which angles will have the strongest emotional pull. And I've written here, weak desire equals weak ads, and strong desire is where you actually find scale. Now, let's put this into a real life example. So I when I was going through this, obviously I've reverted it back to the initial products that we've done research on, but let's go a little bit deeper there. So using our deep research workflow and raw avatar language. So if you have already built out these documents, You don't have to overcomplicate it. You can literally just upload these into Claude and start asking it to extract desire clusters for you. And it will start to scan through your files, and you'll be able to get all of this back. And then you can start looking into things on a much deeper level. So the first desire is freedom from daily maintenance. So we know that freedom is one of our key desires that people typically have. So at the core, they aren't just looking for hair reduction, they want their life back. So this is how you need to start looking at things. Like, this isn't just a case of removing hair for people. It's much bigger than that. Like, this is controlling their life. It's controlling their mental health. Like, they just want things to go back to normal. They're exhausted from routines that drain time, energy, and confidence. What they actually want is, and this is again pulled directly from their language. This is what our ICP has actually said. I want to stop plucking every single day. I want a method that doesn't demand constant upkeep. I want mornings where I don't panic check my upper lip in the morning. I want my skin to calm down instead of flaring up from shaving, waxing, or threading. So this one was really about losing the sense of being trapped, breaking repetitive cycles, finally having predictability instead of daily stress, and moving from managing the problem to actually reducing the problem. And as I mentioned, this desire is the freedom cluster. So they want to stop being controlled by regrowth. And this is a time plus mental load reduction desire. The next one that we have, desire cluster number 2, is to feel feminine again. So almost every deep Reddit thread contains some variation of I don't feel feminine, I feel like a man, it strips away my womanhood, it ruins my confidence in photos, I feel disgusting when people stare too long. So again, like, the desire isn't just I want less hair. The desire is literally I want to feel like myself again, and I want to feel feminine, attractive, and wanted. The deeper layer here is identity, which is one of the strongest levers in direct response. So the desire is identity / status / self-image. This is a true mass desire and a bleeding neck problem. And this is key here, because these desires, just because we're actually identifying them as desires within our category, it doesn't mean that they're going to be scalable desires. So even if we look at 1, 2, and 3, so we have 1, which is the freedom from daily maintenance, we have 2, which is to feel feminine again, and then we have the third one here, which is the desire for gentle, safe, non-damaging care. So this is where people are saying hair removal creams burnt my skin, laser made it worse, threading makes me break out for days, etc., etc. Their desire isn't just something that works, it's something that won't destroy their skin in the process, something gentle, something that works with their skin instead of damaging it. And their desire is health and safety. Now, really, the most scalable desires are desires that tie into raw emotions. So something like desire cluster 3 and desire cluster 1, they're not typically desires that I would initially enter the market with. These are more supporting desires where I would mention parts of this within my script, but it wouldn't be the core messaging. And if it is the core messaging, it would usually be used as like a second or a third touch point. So when someone's already watched one of my top of funnel ads and then they're already product aware, and now it's a case of, okay, just like hitting them with a different angle to actually push them across the line. So the safety angle, like the safety desire, this is where it can really come into play. Whereas something like this, to feel feminine again, I've mentioned here, this is a true mass desire and a bleeding neck problem. So if it's ruining their sex life, if it's ruining their dating life, like if they generally can't put on makeup because of all of their hair and they just want to be a normal girl, this is like a really, really, really strong desire, because this ties back to emotion. And emotion is the strongest desire to get someone to convert. So that's kind of the breakdown on how I'm looking at things. So let's see what else we've got here. We've got desire cluster 4. So this would be like more around like the sexual angle or the dating angle, which is similar to desire number 2, but I would still treat them separately, because this is to feel feminine again, but this is to actually, being able to hug someone without feeling anxious, or be able to go on a first date without having to sit the furthest away from the window because you don't want the light shining on your face and exposing your facial hair. So here we have women repeatedly mentioned hiding their face during dates, panicking when someone touches their cheek, pulling away from partners, avoiding kissing or cuddling, feeling dread under bright lighting, and refusing to be photographed up close. So again, like, I would consider that another bleeding neck problem. Not so much probably as strong as desire cluster 2, because this is an emotion that someone is going to be feeling every single day. Whereas this could be something where it's still something that they struggle with in their life, but it might not be to the extent that they're thinking or feeling this on a day-to-day basis. But again, this is where you just have to start testing things and get data and actually see what takes spend and what actually works. And then we have desire cluster 5, the desire for long-term hair reduction. Women are tired of solutions that last for 24 hours, methods that make their hair grow back thicker, routines that create new problems, treatments that require constant appointments. Their desire is a long-term reduction pathway, not a one-time fix. And then we've got pulled real quotations from our customers. I want something that actually slows regrowth. I want a solution that gets easier over time. I want progress, not another band-aid. I want something sustainable. And their desire, if we tie it back to the main desire clusters, is control/stability. And then finally, just as an example here, and again, like, I could go deeper and deeper and deeper and keep extracting more and more desires. But this will be the last one that we finish off for this example, which would be emotional relief. So our research shows that nearly everyone is suffering from emotional overload and wants emotional relief. So pretty much all of these other desires, they're also going to share the desire, which is emotional relief. And this is the thing as well. People can have more than one desire. So someone who wants the desire for long-term hair reduction can also have the desire that they want to feel feminine again. So they're shared, typically they're always shared desires. And that's what we want, because if we can include more of these desires within our scripts, then we're speaking to more than one desire. And this is where we can really build a proper connection with people, because we're talking about, let's say, long-term hair reduction, but then we're also touching on the point that it's okay not to feel feminine. Like, this is something that we all feel, and you can work through it. And the more desires that you speak to within an ad, especially if they're around shared desires, then the easier it's going to be for them to actually feel like it's the right product for them. So we can see here that they are literally saying it's mentally exhausting, suffocating, something I think about every single hour, a secret that consumes me, it's ruining my life. Their desire isn't just physical, so it's not just a case of actually having the hair on their face, but it's also emotional. So they want to stop obsessing over it. They want to stop feeling judged. They want to stop scanning mirrors every single day. They want to stop spiraling mentally. They want to stop feeling ugly. They want to stop feeling like less of a woman. This cluster is important because it shapes the tone of your script, and their desire is freedom and health, which essentially you could look at as mental health. Like, this is literally ruining the mental health of thousands and thousands of women. So we still have a lot to cover here, but even just reflecting on the section that we've just went over there around desires, you can see how maybe you're watching this and this might feel completely new to you. And maybe now you can see it's not just a case of looking at something like women who struggle with unwanted hair, but you need to be looking at every single product as something that is the solution to many different desires and many different types of people. And this is obviously just an example towards this product here, but this is something that I do with every product that I run, essentially. Now, of course, depending on what category you're selling in or what vertical you're in, this will be more relevant for if you're running more direct response style ads. So if you're selling a product that is essentially solving a problem. If you're in fashion or jewelry, you should still go ahead and do this, because even if you're selling something like jewelry, there's still different desires that people have to why they're actually buying the jewelry. But this is really, I would say, an absolute necessity if you are selling things like skincare, supplements, anything to do with pain relief, if your product is solving a problem, then you should not be writing your scripts unless you've went through this and you have a really, really good understanding of all of the different types of desires, all of the different types of angles that you can run, and all of the different avatars there as well. So let's move on from desires into angles. So angles is essentially our entry point into the category. Now, our category in this example is women with unwanted hair growth, but that's not our main angle. And because that's a category, it's not actually an angle, but a strong angle must be big enough to scale. It must be specific enough to speak directly to one cohort. It must be emotionally charged enough to create instant attention. And it must be broad enough to generate many unique concepts. Now, by concepts, I mean the different types of ads that we're going to be building around this one specific angle. And it must have mass desire and mass frustration. And you'll hear me mention this probably quite a lot because I really stand by it. And for me, the easiest way to convert something is if it is a bleeding neck problem. And it doesn't matter what the product costs are. It doesn't matter how much competition within the market. If your product is solving a bleeding neck problem and you're speaking directly to that person who is experiencing that bleeding neck problem, you can convert them. That's why people also have the limiting belief of, well, the product on Amazon is 3 times cheaper than what my price is on my own website. How can I actually scale? How can I compete with Amazon? You're not competing with Amazon. Amazon has search intent-based buyers. People are going on there to actually purchase a product that they know that they need. Us who are running cold traffic, we're getting in front of people who have no intent to come onto the platforms and make a purchase, but they have bleeding neck problems. And if our messaging is tying into that bleeding neck problem, that's where we can get them to come in and make the purchase there and then without even thinking about it, because the messaging is so strong because of all of this training that we've now implemented that they feel like there's no other product that does what is actually required, because no other product speaks to them like we're speaking to them. And back to the angles, if you can't create 10 concepts from it, usually it's not a good angle and it's too niche. So let's look at some angles that we could run for the category that we're focusing on. Now, the first angle is PCOS facial hair, which, as we know, is driven from hormonal driven growth. This is one of the strongest scaling angles in the entire category. Now, why is that? It has an extremely high emotional tension. It has deep frustration behind it, i.e. bleeding neck problem. It has long-term struggle. And I even remember on one of the Reddit posts, there was one that was written about PCOS facial hair from 15 years ago. So long-term struggle, but it's also an evergreen angle as well. Strong identity pain, I feel unfeminine. Large passionate communities, there's PCOS communities on Reddit, there's Facebook groups around it as well. And it has clear problem labeling, so we can speak directly to that angle. And then we have real quotes from this angle as well. PCOS hair does not respond to the normal stuff people recommend. Metformin did nothing for me, which is a type of medication that people try. I feel so defeated. Laser barely made a dent. Hormonal hair is a different beast. Now, the second angle, which is quite similar to PCOS, but I would still treat them as different angles, which is the Heritsum, which is more specifically thick, dark facial hair, that thick, dark, coarse looking hair, which, as we know, is male pattern growth that feels out of place on their face. It's visible stubble even after hours of plucking. It has an upper lip and chin shadow, and it's mainly the hair type, which is dark, coarse, fast-growing facial hair. The frustration and urgency will be even higher versus those with typical light hair growth. When you go through our raw research once again, we see the same lines over and over. I don't feel feminine anymore. I feel like a man. The shadow shows through my makeup instantly. I hate bright lighting. It exposes everything. I check my face every hour. My chin hairs are so thick that they snap the tweezers. It's not just the hair, it's what the hair actually means to them. And again, when we're looking at these angles, again, bleeding neck problems, and it ties back to the strongest desires, which is in like emotional relief and just overall the emotions that people have in regards to the condition that they're facing. Then we have angle number 3, sensitive skin / everything irritates me. Now, of course, like I'm just giving you guys an insight into how I would be looking at this if I was coming in and testing this product. Now, these are just angle examples that I've extracted from the research that we've done, but this doesn't mean that these are good angles that I would actually run with. And I'll show you in a second which angle I would start with, why I would start with it, and then where I would actually go from there, and how I would then start to break things down. So the angle number 3 would be women who can't use any conventional method without their skin reacting, which again showed up a lot in our research. The avatar isn't looking for hair removal, she's looking for relief. She deals with wax burns, threading breakouts, shaving irritation, redness for days, chemical creams that sting, laser that worsens regrowth, ingredients her skin can't tolerate. The avatar's world is defined by everything I try backfires. This should actually be angle. Let's do this. Everything I try backfires. My skin punishes me when I remove hair. I'm scared to try new products because I don't want another flare up. Laser caused dark spots and sensitivity. My face breaks out every time I remove hair. So you can see like there's so many pain points that actually comes over this overarching angle. And it's still a strong scalable angle because it's broad. A huge percentage of women identify as sensitive skin. It contains deep emotional tension, fear, embarrassment, and frustration. It lets you build dozens of concepts around why harsh methods fail. It positions your product as a safe alternative inside the dangerous category. And I've put down here because I think this is really important. This angle is especially powerful for solution-aware, product-aware, and warm retargeting, but it also works extremely well for cold traffic when executed correctly. Now, why did I mention solution-aware and product-aware? Obviously, people in me's awareness levels, they've already tried hair removal creams that will strip off the hair off the skin, but then it will leave them with burns, chemical burns. They've tried laser, but if we come back up here, laser caused dark spots and sensitivity. So they essentially have tried all of these different solutions, but now they're looking for a safe solution and something that actually agrees with their skin, which would mainly be your solution and product aware ads. And then we have angle 4, long-term regrowth reduction as well. Women are exhausted by 24 to 48 hour fixes, constant upkeep, solutions that make regrowth worse, painful routines that never actually end, resetting 0 every time they remove hair. And you can see that it's one of the deepest desires in the category, which is predictability, stability, and a solution that actually compounds and is long term. You're not just putting a bandage over the issue. This is where you can actually say within your ads that you're actually getting to the root cause of this. And then you would tie in your mechanism around that as well. So that, yes, we're getting to the root cause. But if you just say, everyone says, okay, this targets the root cause, but then you actually need to go into the mechanism and actually explain to them why this gets to the root cause, why other products don't get to the root cause. And if you can combine that with your mechanism, then that's where you will start to see some great results in your ads. And this is something that I've spent a lot of time perfecting over the last 12 months. It's really going into the mechanism, which we'll touch on, but focusing on actually long-term results for people. And then we have angle 5, which we're going to skip over, but I will leave this document under this video as well. But let's get on to the next section. So just looking at this here, now we have we'll reflect back into the angles. Now we have our core category, which is women who struggle with unwanted hair. But now it's a case of, okay, what different angles are we able to actually push? And as I said here, angles are basically just our entry point into the category. So each of these angles, there'll still be crossover in regards to people who fall into more than one angle. Just like with the desires as well, there's people who fall into more than one desire. And typically people have multiple desires as well, as we've spoken about. But this will give you the starting point to actually see visually, okay, like these are the different angles that I can run with. And now it's a case of actually selecting which angle that you're going to initially test with, which we'll get onto. But if we come all the way back up to the start of the document where I mention about the noob mindset and why most product tests fail, it is simply because they either don't get deep enough into their angles and they're trying to pretty much speak to everyone with very generic messaging, or they're only testing one of these angles. So maybe they just go for the angle of long-term regrowth reduction, but actually they don't tap into or they don't test the PCOS facial hair angle, which actually is the angle that's going to potentially unlock the most amount of scale. But because they've not tested it, the product test is over, the angle that they tested has failed, and they consider it a failed test. So this is why it's important that before you actually start writing your scripts, you're almost building a visual map in your mind on different ways that you can do things and different ways that you can actually approach things to come in and penetrate this market. So now the next layer to this is avatars. So your angle defines what you're talking about, and your avatar defines who you're actually talking to inside of that angle. So within all of the angles that we've just ran over there, which was just a few examples, and again, this is all like generic information. This applies to any single product that you guys are testing. This is just core fundamentals and principles that everyone who's running ads absolutely has to understand. But avatars, they live within all of these angles, and there's multiple of them. And there are distinct subgroups of people who experience the same problem differently. So they're not like demographics. Like people will usually say like their avatar is 30-year-old new parents who are based in Texas in the USA. And that really isn't your avatar. That literally is just describing the demographic of someone. So not demographics, not women 20 to 30, not new parents, not people who struggle with acne. An avatar is narrower, more emotionally charged, and more predictable in how they think and behave. It's like really the difference between women with unwanted hair versus the woman who plucks every morning because she's terrified someone will notice her upper lip. And this is the layer that makes your creative instantly feel like this is literally about me. And once again, if you have been in e-commerce builders for a long time, you've listened to a lot of the information that I've been putting out, you've been tuning into a lot of the live calls. When it comes to actually talking about creatives and how I'm thinking about actually building my creatives, really, like the bottom layer of this is being able to achieve this. They should be watching your ad and they should be thinking, holy fuck, these guys actually get it. This is the first time that I actually feel like it's speaking directly to me. Like they know what I'm going through every single morning. They know what I'm going through in regards to my emotions and not being able to date. But you can't achieve building your creatives like this unless you know all of this up here, unless you know especially what their desires are. And if you really break it down into layers and go deeper into that research. Because the thing is, right, this is a bit of a side tangent, but it's important. People lean too heavily into AI. Claude, it does an okay job, but Claude won't know exactly the desires that we need to tap into or the certain keyword that we need to mention that's going to get things to click when they actually watch the video. And it's like some of this here, like let's look for an example. Like even something like this here, this is pulled from our raw research. I panic if someone leans in to kiss my cheek. So even just having, like that could be a hook, for example. And even just having that one sentence in there, like that could be an instant trust builder between ad and the customer. Wow, fuck, that's me. Like I experience that all the time. Like when I'm meeting someone new or going out for dinner with someone, like I panic. Or when I'm with a new guy and he comes in to kiss me, like I absolutely panic. And unless you've been through that, you really don't know those key emotional triggers to actually include. And the best ads, like the absolute best ads that achieve this here, which is them feeling like it's literally about them, it's combining multiple of these emotional triggers, not just one. And if you can have all of these emotional triggers channeled into your messaging, that's how they feel that instant connection. And that's when other competitors are shopping around on Amazon. That's when all of that goes out the window because you've built that trust and they feel like they need that product right now and they'll go ahead and purchase. And maybe I've mentioned this in a video lesson already, but this is actually how you also get a high conversion rate. It's not just a case of split testing your offer or changing out your PDP layout. It actually comes from the root of your message within that instant touch point. When they feel understood, friction drops, trust rises, and your conversion increases, as I just said there. A good ad should make your avatar feel like, holy fuck, I thought this was only me. These guys get it. I need this. It should build connection on the deepest level. And then again, I've pulled a quote from Breakthrough Advertising, absolute goat of a book. Mass desire is universal, but each group feels it for a different reason. Your job is to identify and speak to these groups. So now we're going to go on to the avatar framework. So you've got an understanding of avatars and the importance of them, but now it's actually how do we put this into practice? All right, let's move down now into the avatar framework. So most will treat the avatar as one avatar, and which is why pretty much most people struggle to scale, or you struggle to scale unless you're actually breaking things down on a much deeper level. And in a crowded space with demand for attention at an all-time high, you need to be fully resonating with your ICP. Breaking down angles into avatars lets you see the real pockets of people who respond the strongest. And each micro avatar comes from 4 different categories, which we're about to run through. 4, but then you can kind of tie on a 5th one, which we'll get to as well. So the first one, we have different emotional drivers. So people feel the same problem for different emotional reasons. Now, the examples that I've put here are shame-driven, fear-driven, frustration-driven, confusion-driven, and hope-driven. And these emotional drivers shape what they notice, what they avoid, what tone they trust, and what gets them to stop scrolling. Shame-driven avatar responds to soft language, privacy, and feeling understood, not exposed. A frustration driver avatar wants straight answers, simplicity, and proof that it cuts the BS. So for example, a frustration-driven avatar will typically be living within this angle right here. You know, they are heavily solution and product aware. They're just at the end of their tether right now. They're absolutely just fed up. They're ready to give up. They think that everything is a complete scam. And then we have a fear-driven avatar, which needs reassurance, predictability, and a sense of this won't backfire on me. Same angle, but the emotional driver will change the delivery / messaging of the ad. So that is different emotional drivers. Now, the second category is experiences. So this is what they've personally been through that changes how they see the problem. And the examples that I've got here are a treatment that backfired. So we know that laser hair removal, people will get dark spots, or it will cause skin sensitivity. A method that hurts. So we have people getting chemical burns, for example. A routine that became exhausting. We've got people who are having to pluck their hairs every single morning. And actually, there was one quote that I saw within the research where someone said that they spent 2 hours in the morning plucking all of their hairs. A solution that made things worse, a moment of embarrassment, obviously on the first dates, or there was also another comment or another Reddit-based story where she was with her boyfriend and she had to bend down and thing up, and then her top lifted up and it exposed her hairy back. So stuff like that, a professional treatment they can't afford. A lot of people, obviously, for this specific product, they can't afford laser treatment. You know, it's expensive, and also it's something that I believe you need to get consistently, so like once every few months. And then shared experiences create easy avatars. When you reference a specific experience, the avatar feels like they actually get it, which makes sense, right? If you mention all of this within your scripts, again, like you're building that connection, they feel understood. And as I mentioned, all of this, like these 4 categories, the same for any product that you guys are testing. Third one is behaviors and habits. So a behavior is the cleanest window into someone's identity. These are patterns that they fall into because of the problem. Behavior is one of the strongest levers that you can pull in creative, which is so fucking true. When you call it a behavior, the avatar doesn't feel targeted, they feel seen. So again, some examples in regards to the product that we're using here. She never sits near a window in daylight. She books dates at night because the low lighting makes her feel safer. She keeps tweezers in every bag she owns. She cancels plans when her skin is irritated. She zooms into the front camera 10 to 20 times a day, checking if anything is visible under different lighting. She avoids anything that's close proximity, hugs, kissing, etc. She wears her hair down on bad regrowth days to hide her jawline and sideburns. So guys, like, honestly, this is so valuable. Just think if you are in that position at the start of the document where you're having a lot of success. I bet a lot of you guys now are, I mean, we're probably not even halfway through, but I bet a lot of you guys now are thinking, holy fuck, like there's so many more layers just pushing the core problem. And you can see that if you're actually mentioning these within your ads, like they are going to be so primed and ready to buy. If you're touching on all of this and then introducing your product as the solution to all of this, you can see how direct response can be so, so powerful. And these are the kind of behaviors that reveal identity, expose emotional patterns, tells you exactly how they live, give you perfect hooks, and most importantly, make your ads feel like a lived experience, which actually, let's put that in bold because that is a super key point. Now, the fourth one here is demographics. So actually, these are like the core three, and the fourth is more so, I would say, like an add-on. So demographics are the least important part of an avatar, but still important. I mainly look at demographics to help me refine the delivery of my ads. If we take unwanted hair growth as our example, age or race doesn't define who the avatar is. So going back to the start of the avatar section, like a woman in her 30s, like that's just a demographic. It's not actually an avatar, but it will change how they experience the core problem. So a woman in her 20s dealing with fast visible regrowth during uni or work life is not the same as a woman in her mid-30s who's been managing the problem for 10 plus years and is emotionally drained by the routine. Younger women may panic about dating and close proximity, whilst older women, like if you just picture like a 65-year-old, she's probably not like panicking about going on a date and getting embarrassed in front of a guy because of her sideburns and her moustache. She's going to be more worried about long-term irritation, scarring, chemical burns, and just feeling like at that age it's just something that she has to live with now. She's been dealing with it for 20 years. This is just life. This is just how it is. But your job now is to come in and break that common belief. And then women with deeper skin tones will worry more about hyperpigmentation and dark patches caused by shaving, waxing, or hair removal creams. And again, from our research, we know that laser can actually be bad for dark spots and hyperpigmentation. And again, this will change the messaging in your creative towards this specific demographic. Now, another key thing to do is, or take in mind, that it will also change how we show the ad, especially our editing. So especially like the pacing of the ad, etc., which I'll show you guys some examples of. So if we take the older demographic, I'll slow the voiceover down in the ad, slower transitions and pacing, make it easier to digest. So you don't want that fast pacing, quick transitions. You want it to be really, really slow, easy to digest. A good brand to go and look at if you go to the ad library is this one here. So Ankway mushroom gummies, like these guys kill it in the UK market, and they speak to a much older demographic. So if you go and look at their ad library and go and look at their pacing, they've got it dialed in, and they're not running with super fast pacing ads. That's more if you're selling towards a younger demographic, Gen Z, millennials. As I've mentioned here, shorter attention span for the younger demographic. So faster pacing. We'll test more native feeling concepts like a POV style ad, day in the life, get ready with me, talking head. mainly the type of content that you would see being ran on Calodata by TikTok affiliates. That's heavily curated for a younger demographic, because TikTok, typically younger demographic, of course, still is old people on there, but the content is more in line for the younger crowd. The different demos consume content differently, so pacing should match the way they naturally consume content, which is super, super key. Now we have beliefs. Beliefs are the hidden walls inside the avatar's mind. Beliefs determine what they will think will work or won't work, who they will trust, what they've given up on, how quickly they believe your mechanism, how resistant they are to your claims. Desires pulls someone towards your product, and beliefs are what push them away. Our messaging needs to break and flip the beliefs. So I actually mentioned back in our demographic, for example, if you have someone who's 65 years old and they still struggle with hair growth, they've tried all of these products, they will have that common belief that it's just how it is. They're stuck with it. So that would be an example of a belief that you now need to break. You might have another belief where they just think that hair products that remove hair from them, like creams, lasers, etc., it's just not suitable for sensitive skin. Again, that's another example of a belief that within your scripts, your job is to break. And let's actually look if these guys mention anything about the safe. So you can see here. So they're mentioning natural ingredients. It's formulated with carefully selected natural botanicals that work gently on your skin without disrupting hormonal balance. The base features nourishing olive oil and vitamin E to moisturize and repair skin post hair removal. So again, like this will be really good to include within some of your ads and some of your concepts, because if you mention this, again, that can break that common belief that all hair removal products are bad for your skin. Examples of beliefs, I've given you a few there, but let's go into some more that I've got written down. Everything I've tried makes it worse. So as I kind of alluded to there, laser making hair darker and thicker, hair removal creams burning skin, threading causing breakouts, waxing causing irritation and redness, and metformin doing nothing even at high doses. This belief creates skepticism towards any new solution, a prove it to me stance, and a high need for reassurance and mechanism clarity. A second one would be because it's hormonal, I'm stuck with this forever. We've got some raw quotations from our Reddit research here. PCOS facial hair is a life sentence. They think that they've literally got no option but to just deal with it. Nothing actually changes hormonal growth. This is just how I will always look. This belief creates hopelessness, emotional heaviness, and 3, usually a strong response to progress over time framing. They already know it's not a quick fix, which this belief will actually live heavily in this angle here, which is long-term regrowth reduction. This is actually going to be like a breath of fresh air to these people, because a lot of them have the belief that everything is just a quick fix that is almost like a bandage. It doesn't actually help long-term, and it's still an issue that will be ongoing. And then we have another one here. Hair always grows back thicker. And in fact, we've skipped here. Here we go. People will judge me if they notice. I feel disgusting when people stare. A guy asked if I used to be a man. I avoid bright lighting because it exposes everything, creates shame-driven decision-making, high emotional response to ads that speak to privacy, etc., etc. 3rd, hair always grows back thicker after removal. And then 4th, we have makeup doesn't work properly because of the hair. My facial hair ruins the look of my makeup. Makeup just sits on top of it. And this creates a strong reassurance with beauty, function, improvement, and the reasoning behind why it helps. Completely slows regrowth, makes it lighter, etc., etc. Right, so we have covered a fuckload of information here. And I hope so far you're sticking with me and it's opened up your eyes. But you might actually be wondering now, okay, like maybe I feel a bit overwhelmed. How do I actually apply all of this? And the thing is that you don't need to go as deep as I've just went from the initial get-go. If you already have something that is scaling, if you already have an angle or multiple angles that are working well, then this is how you can really start to expand on these and unlock new levels of scale. But let's strip it back and go to the initial product test. And part 5, how this actually drives real testing. Now, there's probably a lot of different ways that you can do this, but I'm going to share with you exactly how I do it. So this is my recommendation. Mine is this here. So mine is go broad, validate what works, and then go deep. So if you think back to earlier on in this video when I was mentioning, me included in this, but anyone else that I know who's doing good numbers in ecom, they say they've been unprofitable within the first few weeks. That's because you're usually in this phase here, where you're going broad and you're just buying data and you're looking for points of validation. So you're casting a wide net. Then you find what is working. Okay, this is taking spend. This ad around this angle is converting well. This is where the majority of my profitable purchases are coming from. And then that's when you double the fuck down and you go deep. So broad, validate, go deep, especially if you're testing a new product. You don't need to break it down as extensively as the above on your initial test. It'll slow you down and add unnecessary complexity. Move with speed. And this is the thing, I don't want people just thinking that they need to go into all of their avatars, go really, really deep into this, write scripts around all of these different avatars, because honestly, you're going to waste your time because you don't actually know where to double down on and where to spend more time on. So the first thing that you want to be doing is start with broad, scalable angles. So these are angles that tap into existing mass desire, appear constantly in your raw and deep research, ideally a bleeding neck problem with huge frustration. I should have taken away ideally and said, is a bleeding neck problem with huge frustration, are broad enough to scale to 30K days. Like honestly guys, one angle that crushes can get you to 30K days without going deep pretty easily, as long as it's a bleeding neck problem and the TAM is big. One of the best sources to find good angles is Amazon, Trustpilot reviews. This literally shows you what specific pain points people are buying this product / similar products for. So I think, let's just touch on that point. I think some of the most obvious things to do, or one of the most obvious things to do, is of course, look at the competitor that you've identified who's already running your product. Or if you don't have a direct competitor, because maybe you've done a different style of product research, which I will teach you guys, or I've already taught you guys, which will be around finding a product or an angle that is working and then find a similar product. But the main thing that you need to look for is within your category, identify what your competitors are running. Is it PCOS hair growth in this example? Is it a different angle? Like start off with what your competitors are running. Now, the next thing that you obviously then want to check is something like Google Trends. So if we come and look at PCOS driven hair growth, we can see actually on Google Trends here in the US over the past 5 years that this is, first of all, an evergreen angle. You'll see some of the angles that some terms on Google Trends, it will be like this: big spike up, big spike down. Maybe if it's a seasonal product, like if you type in bikini, for example, you're going to see that big spike up around spring and summer, and then a big falling knife in autumn, winter. But you can see that this is evergreen, so this is something that you'll be able to push no matter what month of the year. And also it's on a steady uptrend as well. So right now it's actually almost at a peak, and the volume is really good. And of course, it's something that was coming up constantly within our research. It's also an angle that is proven at scale, not just around PCOS hair growth, but also PCOS has multiple different things and different problems that it causes, such as hair loss. There's plenty of hair loss products that use the PCOS hair loss angle. It's a huge category, and we can validate that because also the community on Reddit has 259,000 members. So the first thing is what angles are actually scaling on cold traffic. Identify them first. Go and look at things like Amazon and Trustpilot reviews. So go on competitors' Trustpilots. What are people saying in the reviews? Usually they're going to give away things like why they bought the product or where they're using the product. In this case, it could be whereabouts in the product they're using. I had a hairy back. I bought it for PCOS, etc., etc. You're going to find a lot of key gems within these reviews around a direction of angles. And then you just want to validate the actual volume of the angles as well, and then go deeper into like Facebook groups, Reddit. Is it widely being spoken about? In this case, PCOS, it is. So for me, for this product, this would probably be a good starting angle to go for. And I've also done here, the TAM is huge. PCOS symptoms affect 1 in 10 women. Now let's look at an angle that I wouldn't typically see as a broad scalable angle. And again, this is relative to this product, but this will be the same for any product that you guys are running. So as you know, we have the angle sensitive skin / irritates, everything irritates me. It's still a valuable angle, but it wouldn't be the sole angle that I run with. I'd see this more of a supporting angle. It'll work well on a solution aware and product aware audience, as I've already mentioned. The TAM is smaller, desire isn't as strong, emotional intensity is lower. It's still good to run it in the ad account, especially for middle of funnel when they've already seen some of your ads. Now, honestly, what I would recommend is don't just launch one angle initially. Ideally, build out ad concepts around multiple different angles, at least 2 angles. So if I was testing this product, I could go with building out ads around PCOS-driven hair growth. I know that there's a lot of emotional triggers there. I know that it's a bleeding neck problem. I know that it's a huge TAM. It's a massive market. This angle alone could get me to huge revenue levels. And it's mainly going to be driven to more a problem-aware audience. But then this would enhance the product test if I also launched a secondary angle around sensitive skin and everything irritates me. Now, when I was writing out this document, I said that I wouldn't see it as a broad scalable angle, but it doesn't mean that it's not a good angle to run in the ad account, because I could have this one speaking to a different awareness level, which is more problem aware, but then I can get some low hanging fruit into the solution and product aware audiences here as well by going into sensitive skin / everything irritates me. And if you're launching with multiple angles, you're essentially giving Meta's learning machine to easily find more customers for you instead of just PCOS and only going into that angle and that category of people. You're giving Meta more to work with. Now, the second thing is early scripts. So the scripts that you're writing initially, you still want them to have depth behind them, but you don't have to go into deep segmentation. And by deep segmentation, I mean into all of the sub-avatars. So a broad angle doesn't mean generic shit copy. Even if you aren't deliberately segmenting deep in avatars, your scripts should still include emotional drivers, lived experiences, recurring behaviors, core fears, frustration loops, identity tension, belief barriers, basically everything that we've ran through within this video. That still needs to be integrated into your script. You're just not isolating them into separate avatars yet. So I've said, think of it like this. Broad testing is essentially a script that will speak to what everyone inside the angle is feeling. And scaling, when you want to unlock new levels of scale, that's when you'll break things down and build concepts around a specific avatar, which will speak directly to what each avatar feels differently. And then when an angle works, go deep. So as I initially mentioned here, up at the start, we want to go broad, validate, meaning validate the angle, what's actually taking spend, what's profitable, and then you want to be going deep. So broad angle working, break into avatars, and then scale. After testing across some different broad angles, you'll quickly be able to identify which one has legs, and then at this point, you go deeper. Now you break the angle into its sub-avatars, so you can pull out the emotional pockets that convert better. Once the angle is validated, start isolating emotional drivers, lived experiences, recurring behaviors, the core beliefs holding them back. And again, another breakthrough advertising quotation that I've pulled out: you don't move the market, you move with the market. The broad angle lets you identify where the demand is. The avatar deep dive then lets you intensify that desire by speaking to the exact reasons why each group feels it. Then when your avatar is watching your ad, they'll be thinking, as I said, what the goal is. They're literally describing my life. Then the mechanism ties all of it together. So your messaging is backed by authority. Okay, so let's take a deeper look into how that actually looks when it's broken down. So we have our category / main problem, which is women with unwanted hair growth. And then we have three different angles here. We have our PCOS angle, we have our ingrown hairs, irritation, and texture angle. And then we have angle 3, which is this condition and the excessive hair growth patterns. Now, underneath each angle, I've actually broken this down into sub-angles, which are these secondary boxes here. And then below that, we have our avatars. So if we come and look at the PCOS, you can see that, first of all, why this works: huge TAM, evergreen, identity level pain, and that will just result in a high conversion. But then underneath this angle, you can also then start to have sub-angles as well. So you could create a concept around jawline shadow, chin growth, thick / coarse regrowth, laser didn't work / hair came back. If we reflect back to our research, people saying that laser didn't work, hormonal hair is completely different. It's a lifelong sentence. Medication didn't work. Again, from our research, we know that for PCOS hair growth, a lot of people are taking metformin, but they say that's ineffective. Hormonal hair is permanent. Again, like it's a life sentence. That's a common belief that you've got to break. So you can see how even underneath this broader angle, you can also start to separate it out into sub-angles as well. And then underneath, we then have our different types of avatars. So the hormonal struggler, tried meds, laser, they're skeptical. The identity shock avatar, so that's our avatar of people who just feel like a man, they don't feel feminine, they are really self-conscious about it, they struggle with dating, etc. We have the coarse hair avatar, so that's that thick, fast shadow. They just feel completely hopeless. Like they're the ones who are like struggling with the worst type of hair growth. And then we have, again, from our research, as we've identified, the avatar that has been to the doctor every single week. They've been given different meds and they just feel like the doctors dismiss them. So that's a different type of avatar to go with as well. If we come and look at the ingrown hairs, irritation, and texture, again, this is a core angle. But then underneath that, we can start to break it down into sub-angles based on our research. So we have bikini line bumps, underarm dark marks, we have irritation from shaving, texture issues, dots and roughness, and then we have scarring and inflammation. And then you can see again, it's a bleeding neck problem. This is highly visual, so you can include a lot of before and afters, daily frustration, and then the avatars underneath this would be the bump struggler. So bikini plus underarm bumps. We have the sensitive skin avatar, which is the guys who have been getting chemical burns, they have breakouts, they have acne breakouts. They just have a hard time with all the other products on the market. The texture obsessed avatar, so strawberry legs / bumpy skin. So I mentioned, but strawberry skin, strawberry legs, that has actually been a winning avatar for a lot of people within this sort of category. And then we have the redness and reaction avatar, so inflammation after removal, so a bit similar to the sensitive skin one. And then over here, we have the hirsutism / excessive hair growth patterns, massive demand in raw research. We saw that come up multiple times. And even when we cross-checked that on Google Trends, it didn't have as high of a search volume as PCOS did, but it still had a relatively high search volume, but it was a little bit more niche. But the TAM is still a relatively large TAM based on the research that I've done. And this is especially common in people complaining about having hair growth across different parts of their bodies. So some sub-angles could be hair on your stomach and chest, back / shoulder growth, heavy daily maintenance. I remember one of the researchers was saying that someone who had this condition, they were having to pluck every morning for 2 hours, rapid regrowth after removal, and then thick plus coarse growth patterns. And then you can break that down into different avatars. So chest, stomach, back, hair, the multi-area avatar, someone who just struggles with it all over. So not just their face, but literally across their whole body. Routines that control their life, the daily maintenance avatar, the clothing restricted avatar. So we know that a lot of people, again, who had this condition, they were very limited to the types of clothing that they could wear. And then the intimacy avoidant avatar, which is fear of being seen / dating anxiety. So that pretty much gives you a bit of a visual breakdown of going from your core category / problem into your angles, and then you can break that down even further into sub angles and then into avatars as well. When you're first testing, as I mentioned, you don't have to break things down on such a deep level. You can just go with PCOS / hormonal hair growth as your angle and sort of include all of this within your scripts. But then if you find that this works, then that's where you want to start breaking it down deeper and deeper and deeper, because that's when you are going to typically notice you'll unlock more pockets of scale. You've almost got to look at this as like different buckets. This is like one big bucket, but then within that, you have like other buckets as well that you essentially want to fill with water. If they're empty, you're not really tapping into them. You want to fill them up with water and just break down into much deeper angles and avatars. And then another thing that you can do around something like skincare is start to build out concepts around body areas. So we kind of touched on it here, but you can actually build out concepts around like their underarms or their strawberry legs, or if they're struggling with sideburns, that could be another concept or focus area that you focus on, which is just specifically people who struggle with like really bad sideburns. There's a lot that you can do here, but yeah, don't overcomplicate it to begin with. Start off broad, find out what works. Once you have the data and you've validated something that's working in the ad account, that's where you really hone in on this and you say to yourself, okay, how can I go layers deeper into this? How can I make my ads resonate on a much deeper level? And when you do that, you'll find that conversion rate increases. And also you can notice that your metrics can actually drop as well in regards to your CPMs and your CPCs. So that was a long lesson. Hopefully it's been super eye-opening for you guys as well. And I'll leave the document below this video because I'm sure it'll be something that you'll have to reference again and read through. But honestly, if you can understand this and if you can start to come into any product test that you do with this sort of outlook and understanding, you're going to massively increase your success rate. I can almost guarantee that your hit rate on products will succeed. And it won't just be a case of test a product on day one. I had bad metrics. I have a poor ROAS. This product doesn't work. Let's kill it and move on to the next. It's a case of, okay, that's not worked, but let me come at this from a different angle. And that's really how true e-com operators come into these product tests. As I mentioned, everyone that I know who does numbers, they go through that process for the first 1 to 2 weeks. It's completely normal. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.